Little Nightmares universe has one complicated timeline to say the least. Despite that, it's very intriguing and engages our minds to think more in depth and find answers. In today's video, I'll cover the Little Nightmares universe timeline in a chronological order. Hi folks, I'm R, your narrator, and here is Little Nightmares timeline in order. Before we get into the video, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and beware, as there will be spoilers ahead. The very Little Nightmares game starts with an unnamed girl wearing a yellow raincoat identical to Six's. This girl crashes into the nest with an air balloon. A massive long mansion set atop a cliff right above the sea. This girl is alone, and we don't know what was the cause of her crashing into the mansion's attic. Is it possible that she was escaping another place with dark and hostile entities? As we know through the comics, there are other menacing forces scattered beyond the reach of the Pale City, the Maw, and the Nest. So it's quite possible she was trying to escape, but there's not much that we know about the origins of this girl. And that also raises the question whether there have been some sort of forces that made this air balloon crash into the mansion, or if it was completely random. At a later point in the game, we can find parts of a damaged airplane in a trash room, which does suggest that other flying vehicles have crashed into this mansion. Our protagonist wakes up to the sight of several gnomes in the attic, which directly points out that the lady must have been present in this mansion previously, as she has the ability to turn children into gnomes. Also, who is present in this mansion is Six. I theorized earlier that Six is actually the lady. As she possesses her powers, she can turn children into gnomes as well, but more on that later. Our protagonist meets a mysterious girl, which we later discover to be Six, presumably. Our protagonist traverses through this mansion and passes a jail room, finding cages similar to the ones present in the first game, which the janitor had. This unnamed girl finds a kid imprisoned in one of the cages and sets to find the key to free him. The girl finds the key, which attracts the Craftsman, an antagonist with disproportionately long limbs bound in a wheelchair. After freeing the kid from the cage, our protagonist travels further, where we learn about who this Craftsman is. The Craftsman seems to have the role of making dolls, as evident from the rooms, tools, and products we pass through. The Craftsman traps the children, uses their hair and skin to make realistic-looking dolls from them. Our unnamed girl manages to evade the Craftsman and goes to a lower level, where she encounters the Butler, a powerful telekinetic antagonist who floats above the ground. What's interesting about this Butler is that his hands have been cuffed together behind him, with an eye symbol on the lock. There are some theories that suggest that these people, similar to the Thin Man, used to be children with extraordinary powers who became enslaved or possessed to serve for a certain purpose. The Butler is indeed a servant to the house, as he does all the chores and strangely serves the dolls, which the Craftsman has made. These dolls are then given to a small-sized antagonist by the name of the Pretender, who spends her time playing pretend with these dolls. Don't be fooled by her small size, she's in fact the most powerful of the antagonists in the Nest, as she can make anyone easily vanish instantly, whenever she wants. I theorize that this doll-shaped antagonist is next in line to serve in the Maw, another place where the populace is controlled presumably by the Eye, just like the viewers. But this time, the guests are controlled by food. In a final face-off with the Pretender, the mysterious girl our protagonist met helps her by dropping a boulder on the Pretender. The Pretender survives and jumps off the cliff chasing after the unnamed girl. Neither of them come back up from the water apart from the unnamed girl's yellow raincoat, insinuating that both the Pretender and the unnamed girl die. At the post-credit scene, this mysterious girl climbs down the cliff where a wooden raft is floating, presumably getting on the raft and wearing this unnamed girl's raincoat and setting for the mainland, where the Pale City is located in. By now, you should know that the raincoat creates a dilemma and confuses the timeline, as in Little Nightmares 2, Six is not wearing her iconic raincoat. But with the raincoat floating atop the water, it's pretty clear that the creators wanted to imply that this mysterious girl is no other than Six, and that she will indeed wear this raincoat. Otherwise, displaying the raincoat coming above the water would be a bit pointless. In the original comics, Six stumbles upon 5 other kids sitting around a bonfire after escaping from one of the shifts. The kids ask her about her past events, which she struggles with a little bit, but manages to remember that she spoke with the boy who threw her some bread. She says from what she remembers that she went to the mainland, surrounded by the guests who were in suits, until she bumps into the ferryman, a large character with an extremely long deformed face. She continues as the comics show us a summary of what she went through in the first game, encountering the janitor, the chefs, the guests, and finally seeing the lady. Six questions herself to what is the lady hiding and what has she seen, which transitions into another page through her mask's eye hole, where we see the ferryman and a girl in yellow raincoat tied with ropes being taken to the maw. The text reads as there's no escape in the end. The shadow is always near, waiting for its chance, taking us here. Here's a major theory. According to the comic, Six is really intrigued by the lady and asks what has she seen and what she's hiding, which directly transitions to the events where a girl in yellow raincoat is taken to the maw. It's very possible that the lady is actually an adult-grown version of Six, and as we saw Mono growing to a full-sized thin man, it means that the children in this world are just extremely small but manage to grow very fast to become very large. Six manages to absorb the lady's powers. I don't personally think any other character would have been able to gain the lady's powers after eating her. But as Six is the younger version of the lady, therefore it proved easy for Six to absorb her powers. And the text regarding the shadow is always near, waiting for a chance to take us there, might give us a strong hint that Six keeps getting back to the maw every time she tries to escape. The shadow, referring to her own shadow, forces her to always return to the maw, to possibly relieve her hunger, and maybe, just maybe, Six's powers, or in other terms, lady's powers, only work in the maw. She has the ability to consume, or in other words, absorb lives by her dark shadow power. Even in Little Nightmares 2, we see a carved image of a girl holding the hand of a gnome. In the attic, we can find some gnomes. With what information we're given, the lady is only capable of turning children into gnomes. Does this mean that Six turned some children into gnomes in the hunter's house? In Very Little Nightmares, we could also see a similar image except for a short girl, a tall woman surrounded by gnomes there. Pen that theory, as I'll get back to it in later videos. Six decides to keep her memories when another child tells his story to how he came to the maw. His story entails the tale about the mysterious North Wind, a hostile and powerful entity in the form of a wind which destroys the kid's village. In the comic, we see visuals of people holding pitchforks and torches, presumably chasing after this child and his sister, with a strange text saying that they would be welcomed everywhere after what happened to their village. Is it possible that this wind is connected somehow to the kid? The wind mysteriously follows them anywhere they go, with a text saying that his shadow haunts his steps, and in another photo he pleads with the wind to leave him be, specifically. The text continues by the wind speaking with the boy if he's not tired of hiding or running, and that he should give up. The boy mentions his sister, but the wind says his sister has been his for a long time. Is it possible that the wind is the boy's powers? The ferryman then appears and offers the boy his hand to go to the maw. The boy continues by saying he's at least safe from the wind in the maw, where little things hide. Is it possible that kids with special powers are taken to the maw by the ferryman? Then another boy with orange scarf tells his own story, where he encountered mirrors with some other kids. This kid was hesitant to go to the abandoned house as he apparently was afraid of monsters, but the other boys mocked him, saying that monsters don't exist. Is it possible that this boy also had another power which he could use to conjure monsters or make things come true through mirrors? Especially that the other kids seem to have a normal life in a place where none of these supernatural powers occur. Otherwise, why would they mock the idea of monsters? When they enter the house, the boys look at mirrors and become different. One getting strong and big, another becoming tall and thin, and the last one becoming conjoined with another doppelganger. When the boy with orange scarf opens his eyes glow blue, and a monster conjures in the mirror, who takes the strong boy into the mirror. The boy alongside the other kids manage to destroy the mirror with the monster in, which in turn transforms him into a deformed kid. The kid says that he won't look into another mirror, then soon later he gets visited by the ferryman who takes him to the mall. Is it possible that this boy controls the mirror magic and controls certain characters within Little Nightmares world? The events of Little Nightmares 1 take place in the mall where Six, with her yellow raincoat, wakes up in a suitcase. It's possible that she arrived at the mall in a suitcase by the ferryman. Maybe because her shadow, just like the end of Little Nightmares 2, tempted her to go there for eating, or maybe because she is supposed to become the lady there. Six experiences her first bout of hunger where a boy throws her a loaf of bread. Whenever Six gives in to her hunger, lights flicker and her shadow figure appears. This also happens when she finds her raincoat in Little Nightmares 2. Six gets trapped by the janitor and gets out in a room full of cages with other children imprisoned. Six makes no effort whatsoever to save any other kids, showing that this is not her intention of being in the mall. We see the janitor grabbing dead children, wrapping them in paper and putting them on a hook. Later on, Six arrives at a room filled with shoes and some suitcases. Is it possible that many guests are lured here to die and in the process to be used as meat as well? Six manages to sever the janitor's arms and go up a level to the kitchen where the twin shifts are inhabiting. Six escapes the shifts and reaches the kitchen where bulging guests stuff their faces with food non-stop, presumably until they die. The feast is overseen by the lady who presumably runs the Japanese-styled restaurant. Then when Six is in the process of running away from the scrambling hordes of guests, we see a painting of the lady next to a child looking similar to Six. This further suggests that Six is actually the lady, with the painting showing her before and after, as we don't see the lady with any other children resembling Six. We also see a painting with scratched face, similar attire to the child in this painting at the end of Little Nightmares 2. Does this suggest that Six actually is the lady? It's been also theorized that Six is the lady's daughter, but I think there are more hints that Six actually is the lady herself. At this point, Six eats a gnome, which turns out to be the runaway kid from the DLC. This proves that no matter who or what, Six eats anything. This will be further confirmed at the end when Six eats the lady herself. Six sees a humming lady standing in front of a broken mirror. Most of her mirrors are broken. As in the comic, we can see the mirror can deform you. But in the DLC, we see the lady looking at herself in an intact, tall mirror to which she looks deformed. It's quite possible that the mirror deformed her, but in turn gave her her powers. That's why she doesn't like mirrors. And maybe that's why the final mirror weakens her. It changes her to her original shape, a typical woman with dilapidated powers. Six walks towards the exit after killing the lady, absorbing life forces of some of the guests with ease. In the post-credit scene, we see Six standing by the door with a ship horn being heard at the distance, presumably Six getting on it and leaving the mall to maybe get back to the mainland. We also see the Thin Man's transmission on a TV during the post-credit scene of the DLC. In these comics, we see Six, who's not wearing her raincoat, running away from a relentless hunter. She tries to briefly evade the hunter when a boy wearing a paper bag atop a tree branch distracts her. Staring at the boy, he stares back. The boy is the one and only Mono. In the Little Nightmares website, Mono's description reads as a boy who hides behind a mask as others hate him, and that he wants to finally take his mask off. This might suggest that other characters actually do not like the Thin Man and want to possibly kill him. Six then gets jumped by the hunter, who imprisons her rather than shooting her. This event presumably takes place before Mono finding Six in his house. What we're not sure of is whether Mono decides to go to the hunter's house to free Six or to just go through to get to the Pale City, as he is strangely attracted to the radio tower. Although many of you have theorized that Little Nightmares 2 is a prequel than a sequel, the creators have confirmed it's a sequel, and I do believe it's one too, despite all the evidence against it, which I will expand on in the next segment in this video. We also witnessed the story of a boy with blindfolds on. The boy gets taken by the Thin Man through a TV transmission after he sneaks a peek at the TV. I previously theorized that the Thin Man is held captive by the Eye until he gets freed by Mono, but this proves otherwise. That the Thin Man, in fact, is free to teleport through the TV, but also he might only teleport when instructed by the Eye to obtain certain kids. Maybe the ones who are gifted. Otherwise, he is held captive until Mono frees him, at which point he captures 6, a girl that will betray Mono. Maybe this time the Thin Man acted on his will to stop the loop and him becoming imprisoned. Later on, 6 outruns a mysterious character and hides in a broken TV. He then gets confronted by this character before the screen fades to black and we hear a squish sound effect. As we get a healthy and free Mono in Little Nightmares 2, we know that he definitely evaded this character. But how? He was cornered inside the TV. Was that squish sound a hint that this character gets killed by someone and lets Mono escape? Or is it Mono that kills him? Also, you may say that Mono might have teleported through the TV, but the TV is broken, and by playing through the game, we know that he can only teleport through working TVs. Many of you theorize that Little Nightmares 2 is a prequel, but I believe it's actually a sequel, and the placement of the raincoat somewhere different, 6 not using her powers, and the post-credit scene have been intentionally created to cause more confusion. We see the suitcase 6 wakes up in the mall at the end of Little Nightmares 2, where the monster 6 is, a hint that Little Nightmares 2 is a sequel. Also, we know that 6 left the nest in Very Little Nightmares. She leaves to the Pale City, then gets brought back to the mall, according to the comics. We can't entirely rely on the original comics, however, as they got discontinued. If ignoring the original comics, presuming that 6 went to the mainland or the wilderness, then she should realistically be wearing the raincoat already. Otherwise, why would we get a look at the raincoat at the end of Very Little Nightmares game? That would be entirely pointless. Moving on, Mono wakes up in the wilderness in front of the TV with statics on. He dreams of a corridor with a door at the end, where he finds the Thin Man and opens the door for him towards the end of the game. On a previous theory, we can tell that these dreams signify that Mono and 6 dreamt about their memories actually, which happened in the past, and as the story goes in a loop, they will go through their past memories in the future. Mono enters the hunter's house and frees 6, who is busy playing a music box. A carving suggests that she is holding hands with a gnome. Going into the attic, we actually find gnomes, suggesting further that 6 is actually possessing the lady's powers and have turned some children into gnomes. As we previously learned, the lady is capable of turning children into gnomes, and now 6 possesses those powers. You may ask, why doesn't she drain the life of the perpetrators? It may be that her powers are weaker in the mainland, and she's supposed to be in the mall as the lady, or that her powers don't work on the other strong characters. A distrusting 6 runs away, then randomly trusts Mono and signals him to help her get to the attic. Maybe she soon realizes that she needs Mono's help to get out of the city. Mono and 6 together travel to the Pale City using a broken door as a raft. The Pale City feels strangely empty with clothes of people lying around as if they disappeared right out of their clothes while busy doing their daily routine. A major question arises to what happened to the guests. All the viewers are thin. Is it possible that they are located in a different place? Mono then encounters his first face-off with the TV statics pulsing its energy through while Mono holds his eyes shut. Mono touches the screen and manipulates it to teleport through to the corridor he dreamt of. It seems as if these TVs were placed carefully throughout the game to lure Mono closer to the radio tower and to free the Thin Man in order for 6 to get kidnapped and for Mono to kill the Thin Man and take his place by getting trapped in the depth. Mono and 6 travel further into the city and enter the school. They get ambushed by the bullies who kidnap 6. Mono searches for 6 and finds her suspended by rope. After freeing 6, Mono and 6 stumble upon a room where they find the yellow raincoat, with cargoes which 2 of include pictures of gnomes. Is it possible that these packages were shipped here from the mall? Is it possible that 6 actually got on this ship and took her raincoat off in this room? That could explain why the raincoat is lying here. When 6 puts her raincoat on, the lights start to flicker. Is it possible that the raincoat has something to do with her powers? After all, her shadow figure also has a raincoat on, and whenever she suffered a hunger bout, the light started flickering too. Maybe 6's hunger bouts and powers stem from the raincoat. After running away from the teacher, Mono and 6 enter the hospital, where they incinerate a doctor crawling on the ceilings. Soon later, we get our first look at a viewer who falls down through the ceiling and smashes his own head against a TV screen. The viewers are easily controlled by the TV and do not care about anything else as long as the TV is on. Mono encounters another TV static. This time he sets the Thin Man loose, who then subsequently gets out of the TV and kidnaps 6, leaving the shadow figure 6 behind. This proves that the Thin Man has been imprisoned, as it's the first time he teleports through the TV to act on Will and kidnap 6. In the room 6 gets kidnapped from, we see a picture of the Thin Man. Could this suggest that Mono and 6 had been in this room before and drew the Thin Man's pictures? Mono then uses the TV to teleport, where a mysterious eye monster resides in, which we will encounter at the end of the game. Later on, Mono finds 6 stuck in a TV. When he tries to pull her out, Thin Man pulls her back in. After a chase sequence, the Thin Man seems reluctant to harm Mono and seems as if he wants to talk to him on closer inspection. Even during the final boss fight, Mono starts using his powers first, and the Thin Man seems to want to only deflect them. It seems as if Thin Man has been trying to keep 6 away from her shadow figure to stop her from becoming evil, but more on that later. Mono destroys the Thin Man and goes into the radio tower where time and space is distorted, and it seems as if he gets directed to where to go, as specific doors close and certain ones open. We then find 6 in a monstrous form with her music box. Behind her on the wall hangs a painting similar to the painting in the first game, where a lady is standing next to the girl. It seems as if the girl in the painting and this painting have the same attire. The face of this painting is scratched up. Is it possible that it's her picture when she gets older and eventually becomes the lady? Is that why she scratched her deformed face, which she becomes very insecure about in the first game? And it confirms why she is dependent on the Ma to stay there as the lady. The same suitcase can also be found here, suggesting that she needs to go back to the Ma. Mono shouts at 6, which disturbs her and creates a remnant shadow glitch behind Mono, and Mono manages to destroy the music box, helping 6 to get back to her original shape. At this point, 6 drops Mono to the depth while she walks into the transmission to teleport out of this realm. Mono gets directed to sit on a chair in the depth, where after a time lapse he transforms into the Thin Man, seated until the young Mono opens the door for him to free him. When 6 gets out of the transmission, she gets back to the room she was kidnapped from. At this point, she is reunited with her shadow figure, which looks at the picture of the Ma, causes 6 to have a hunger bout, and disappears. Maybe the Thin Man wanted to separate 6 from her shadow figure here, and was observing her since the beginning of Little Nightmares 1. As in the Secrets of the Ma DLC, we get a look at the Thin Man appearing on a TV transmission. So this could suggest indeed that Little Nightmares 1 is the prequel to Little Nightmares 2. The Thin Man separates 6 from her shadow, but an ignorant Mono reunites her with her shadow. And now 6, free from the captor Thin Man and the hunter, sets to get back to the Ma to become the lady. And that about does it for the timeline of Little Nightmares up to date. I'm intending to make more videos diving deeper into the origins of Little Nightmares characters and answer some other unanswered questions. Keep tuned for more by hitting the subscribe button and the notification bell. Thanks for watching the video. It's been your host Star. Until the next one, have a fantastic day.